I just want to throw this out there. Like spending the time getting the information and putting it in the sheet is something you don't want to do. Have a VA do that for you. And then you just spend the time analyzing what you're looking at instead of needing to go find it and put it in. But whether it's Google Sheets or, I mean, hey, if you're using QuickBooks or something like that, and you've got an easy way to print that out. In QuickBooks, you can do a budget and see the variance, right? Like that can all be done for you in a way that you can view it and make decisions off of that. What I think is really important in what Justin's describing is that when we set out to do this the first few times, we're going to fail, right? We're going to
Yeah.
miss the budget. There's going to be a large variance because it's the first time you're starting to pay attention. But when you start to do it over and over again, it's going to change the decisions you're making. It's going to change the actions you're taking because you're paying attention. And I think, like, if we could look at the analogy of anything that you try to learn, right? Learning to ride a bike, learning to learn how to swim, or anything like that, right? No matter how much research you did before you started, you probably weren't very good at it when you first tried to do it. But if you stuck with it,
Right.
you may have gotten a certain level of proficiency. You might be a pretty good swimmer. You might be really good at riding a bike, but it wasn't that way when you started. This is going to be the same thing, right? Like it's going to be foreign to you when you start. You're going to be like, what? I'm spending money on what? This is money is going where? But then now you're paying attention. And I think that
Yeah.
the key to success at anything is to be intentional, to pay attention, and to have a way of measuring it. And I think that this kind of like marries all of that together, where you're setting a goal, you're paying attention to what's happening, and then you have a way of measuring, am I achieving this or not? And now you can start to make adjustments off of that. So I think a lot of people don't get started because we don't think we're very good at it, but that's not a really good reason to not get started because nobody's good at it when they start.
I agree. I love the quote, when things start to become expectations, they're no longer problems. So it's the expectation that it's going to be hard, you're going to suck at it, you're not going to like what you see for the first 90 days, let's say. Right. So now that's out of the way. Like, it's not a problem. It's the expectation. It's what needs to happen for you to get good at this. Right. A lot of people pray for the outcome, but they don't want to spend time on the input. And a big part of the input is what you're talking about. And we tell our clients for the first 90 days, in like the nicest way possible, like, we don't even really care what you're making or you're spending. We just want you getting into the practice of tracking and raising that awareness to increase the empowerment that you have around your finances. Exactly what you said. Exactly what you said. And so I want to go back to the point though that you made. I agree that at some point you may be able to hire a VA to do the updating, right? But a big issue with that is once somebody else is doing it for you, whether it's an app or a person, there's no skin in the game for you to actually open it up. Like I wish people would do what you said, hire a VA to update it and you just open it up to analyze it. But the issue with that is that people never open it up to analyze it because they don't have to open it up to update it. Right. And they'll make up any excuse to avoid looking at the numbers. And so that's exactly what I do. I have my VA update it for me and now I analyze it. But that was after years of doing it myself to get into the practice of actually doing it, overcoming the fears and the anxieties and the limiting beliefs that make me avoid it in the first place. And that people all the time are like, I just need to get more discipline. It's like, maybe, or you just need to figure out why you're avoiding, and inherently you'll become more disciplined without even focusing on the discipline piece. Right. And so just wanted
Yeah.
to revisit that. You're exactly right. I wish everybody could do that. And you will be able to do that. But there's some value in you doing it for X amount of time. Right. And many reasons being what you just said. Right. When it comes to just you can't make improvements off of things that you're not measuring. Right. And you also can't make improvements off of things that you don't know fully what's going on with them. And so I think you absolutely nailed it. And what happens is after 90 days, 120 days, once you get past that initial fear, once you get past those limiting beliefs, maybe the negative self-talk about what you're spending money on, like, we can now start to see this with a clearer lens, right? And actually make improvements off of the objective information.
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, when we look at it, it's why are we doing whatever we're doing? And if you look at that and you say, okay, have I been achieving this? Have I achieved any level of success that I'm proud of? And what ends up happening is that we realize, like, okay, I started my business because I wanted to have financial freedom or I wanted to have time freedom, yet I'm in the office every weekend. Or I just told my kid no to this thing that they just asked me to buy because we don't have the money for it, right? And you start to look at that stuff and you're like, okay, wait, I'm not actually achieving what this is supposed to be doing. And if that's the case, then what needs to get fixed? We always think, oh, it's just going to be one more client, right? I bring in one more client and that's going to make the difference. That's going to be what's going to allow me to take money home and to have it available in this way. But the reality is that you get one more client and that doesn't do it. And, it's almost like the crack for business owners is just one more client, right? I'm just going to
Yeah.
get one more client and that's going to solve my problem. And the reality is it doesn't. And what really needs to
Yeah.
change is the way that we're approaching all of this, the way that we're looking at it, paying attention, measuring, and then being very intentional with it. It's really so true. Like if we think about it, everything, it's all the behavior, right? It's the behavior we need to control. I refer to the Profit First system by Mike Michalowicz in his book Profit First. I'm a Profit First professional. That whole book is based on human behavior being that when you wake up in the morning, you're going to check your bank balance. And that's not the place. We call that bank balance accounting. That's not the place to really measure what's going on in your life and in your business. That's an indicator of what's there today, but
Yeah.
you may have already spent it all, right? It might all be coming out tomorrow, or you might think you have a lot and therefore you make a decision to buy something that you really can't afford because you made it off of the information of what was there today. It's really a terrible way to operate, but yet human nature, so many of us do it, right? Like maybe not everybody wakes up in the morning and checks their bank balance, but you're checking it once a week, once a month, right? You're logging in, you're checking it, and it really is irrelevant, right? It's not an indicator of anything other than just making sure you're not going negative. But you should have somebody on your team doing that, like making sure that you're not writing something against, something you don't have. But the real point is that we're all humans, human nature, and we all have the same fears, tendencies. We all have the same underlying infrastructure in our brains and the way that we operate. And you have to train yourself to operate differently. And I think that's really what Justin and his team are doing is they're basically helping their clients to create new habits, to create new behaviors, to pay attention in different ways, to be intentional with their money, both on the business side and on the personal side. I think it's very important and I think it's very effective, which is probably why he's having some success with it.